Welcome, everyone. I'm Mariquita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 and is a leading resource for faith-based animal rights veganism. Led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we provide free resources for people seeking to live compassionately towards all creatures. Our extensive library includes vegan sermons and commentaries, animal rights strategies, action alerts, events, and works by various vegan authors. We also sponsor websites for animal rights organizations. Our mission is to unite compassionate individuals worldwide who honor the dignity of all creatures. So today I'm excited to welcome Rachael J. Brown. Rachael earned her plant-based nutrition certificate and food and sustainability certificate from the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies in eCornell. After being diagnosed with high cholesterol in her late 20s, she discovered the China study and started exploring the science of nutrition. After she ate whole food plant-based no oil for just 17 days, her cholesterol dropped 50 points. That was the beginning of her family's journey from the standard American diet to a whole food plant-based no oil lifestyle. A licensed practitioner of massage and the pain neutralization technique, Rachael is also a certified yoga and Pilates instructor and a spiritual director. She completed the 12-day McDougall program and has led corporate mindfulness seminars. She received her BA in geography from the University of Washington and has been an adjunct professor in nutrition and wellness. Rachael belongs to the University of Washington Alumni Association, the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, Whole Communities Program, and Eat for the Earth, as well as Plantstrong and McDougall communities. Rachael is happily married with 2 grown children. She lives in California, where she can usually be found trail running, rock climbing, cycling, and backpacking with her husband. And she's written For Fork's Sake, is her latest book. So we're going to be hearing all about that. And welcome, Rachael. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mariquita. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thanks everybody else for joining us also. We've got a lot to talk about. We had some interesting conversations right before this, so I know that we're going to continue on because you have a lot of you're very well studied and a lot of that is centers around calming and spirituality and techniques that can really help vegans and when vegans are feeling stressed and upset. So we're going to dig right into this. But first, I'd like to ask you, where did this vegan journey begin? When did you discover veganism and how?
Yeah. So for me, I grew up eating mostly vegetarian. I would say my mom cooked meat for my dad. My dad grew up on a farm in Iowa. He left. He has his PhD in higher education, and they moved back to Washington State, where my mom was from. My mom grew up near the coast, eating seafood all the time, and so we had a lot of seafood. But primarily, she cooked vegetarian, and we had fruits and veggies with every meal. She grew a big garden, so I did eat the standard American diet, the SAD, but a pretty healthy one, I would say. And in my 20s, when I got blood work done, I had high cholesterol, and it was high enough that the doctor said he wanted me to go on cholesterol medication. And this wasn't super surprising because ever since I could remember, my dad had been on high cholesterol medication. And I really didn't want to take cholesterol medication because my dad would have these weird side effects. He'd lose his taste from one medication and have to go change medications and all that kind of stuff. And I just didn't want to have to do that. So I would ask, what else can I do? And I was repeatedly told, well, cut back on the eggs and the cheese and exercise more. And I was I played sports in high school. I was a very active person. So I would do more activity and cut back on the cheese and eggs. And my numbers would dip some, but they would always return to higher levels. So that was always concerning. I never wanted to take medication, so I didn't start medication. But then in my early 30s, my nephew was 5 years old, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And his mom at the time was in nursing school, and she had a professor ask her if she had looked at the role of nutrition in cancer. And this is my sister-in-law who had like a small hobby farm. They grew their own animals. She had a huge garden. She had taught me the summer before how to pull mozzarella cheese. And she overnight, we didn't live in the same town, but they overnight, after this professor told her to read the China study and watch Forks Over Knives, she called me and said, "Oh my gosh, you need to read this book and watch this movie." And so we did. They changed their diet overnight, which was pretty shocking to me. And I read the China study first, and my initial reaction was that I was really angry. I just could not believe that nobody had told me this information, that it was as simple as changing what I was eating. That could take care of my high cholesterol, you know? So I watched the documentary Forks Over Knives. In fact, my husband watched it with me, and I said, what about giving this a try? And he was game. And so we got our blood work done and went whole food, plant-based, no oil for 17 days because I couldn't get back in for my second blood draw until 17 days later. And when I went in to see my physician, he said, "I don't know what you did, but keep doing it because whatever you did worked. Your cholesterol dropped 50 points in 17 days, and I couldn't do that with medication. So keep at it." And this was both really good news, I like to say, and bad news because my kids were 6 and 8. We were a busy family, and I was just like, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, all the time. But it was very clear that it worked. So that was the beginning of our journey 15 years ago. That nephew is now 20 years old, a healthy young man, married actually. And both my kids they're now 21 and 23. They both choose to eat this way as well. So we were a normal family, eating. The kids would have, pepperoni pizza when they went to soccer parties and all that stuff. And I started reading and getting my hands on as much of information as I could 15 years ago, which there wasn't as much out there as there is now. But I just realized there was so much information, and it was somewhat confusing, and I wanted to make this as simple as possible for people. And we made a lot of mistakes, from being very black and white. Just we learned all kinds of things the hard way. And so I wanted to give people a guide to make it easier, and also for people, because I kept talking to families and they would say, "Well, I don't think my kids will eat this way." And I found the opposite to be true. Kids had a much easier time making the switch than adults did. So that's why I wrote For Fork's Sake. I told Colin Campbell, who I highly admire. He endorsed the book. And I told him, I always am trying to give the China study to people, but they often would hand it back to me and kind of sheepishly say, I couldn't get through it. It was too much of a book to read, or I don't have time or whatever. And so, my book is a short and easy read. The audiobook is just under 4 hours. So you can read it on a airplane flight. It's a really simple read, and it's designed to be that way. So I'm hoping it's the entry book for people, and then they read all the other wonderful books that are out there that help describe what whole food, plant-based, no oil eating can do for not only yourself, but for the planet, for the animals. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's very much needed, because I gave China study once to a friend of mine. Now, he's very intellectual, a professor. So I thought, okay, he said he's going to read it, and he couldn't make it through it either. I mean, he might not have liked what he was reading, but I mean, he's not in very good health. So despite that I didn't change anything, but I understand it's heavy, and I did read it for Main Street Vegan Academy. So definitely we need some other choices that are lighter and easier and get the point across. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah. That's what I was setting out to do, just to help people understand it's not actually as hard as you think it might be, and to give people just enough facts to understand that real change can occur very quickly. So especially like you said, for people who are unhealthy or dealing with health issues or on medications they're having side effects from or don't want to go on medication. I had to put a medical disclaimer at the beginning of the book that you should talk to your physician, because if you do make these changes in as little as 24 to 48 hours, you might need to reduce medications you're on if you're taking blood pressure medication, medication for blood sugars. So it's amazing. Our bodies are designed to heal themselves. They're always working at that. If we can just stop attacking them with things that are hurting them long enough to let them start to regenerate and heal, amazing things can take place in a short amount of time. And I want everybody to know that.
Right. There is hope. So that's something that we need, because some people think,
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, they're told you got to be on this medication for the rest of your life, and you don't have to be. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so let me just say that. But there's hope
Me
out
either.
there.
Yes. Yep.
Right. Okay. So, well, so then when you became a vegan, or when you found out about this, tell me about your family, like your husband. Did he initially just say, "Wow, let's do it," or how was that? And your friends, what did they think?
Yeah. My husband and daughter are lactose intolerant, and but they both really love cheese and ice cream, and so they would deal with this, horrible stomach pain and bloating and all kinds of issues. And so once we ate this way and saw, oh my goodness, this makes a big difference when you take out the dairy, it was really an eye-opening moment for them. Um, and yes, we were all on board. The other thing that happened was my cholesterol initially dropped a lot, but it should have dropped even more. And my physician said, there could be a genetic component here. If you want, we could do a genetic test. And so I said yes to that. And that's when I found out that I had the Alzheimer's gene, APOE43. So it's not the 44 would be the kind of gene that people get Alzheimer's in their 30s or 40s. But this did make sense because my grandfather had Alzheimer's. And when my parents came through for a visit, they had their blood work done. And my dad also has the Alzheimer's gene, and he now is in the mid stages of Alzheimer's. So we found out that I carry the gene, and our son carries the gene as well. So there were clear reasons for us to try to do everything we could to follow the, genes. Genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger kind of idea. That these genes aren't necessarily expressed unless we are turning them on by certain lifestyle choices. So it made sense for us to do everything in our power to try and keep these Alzheimer's genes at bay. So my husband was all on board, and my daughter, even at 8 years old, said, "No, I'll do this. It makes my tummy feel better when I don't eat cheese." And it was just going to be easier that we all eat the same rather than trying to cook differently for different people. Some people are amazing and will cook 4 different meals for different people in their family, and I was the main cook in the family, and I really wasn't willing to be a short order cook for everybody. So it was kind of going to be this way or nothing. But my husband is very athletic as well, and he used to do a big ride, a mountain bike ride with a group of guys every Wednesday. And he didn't tell me, but for many months he would still at work, he would go get a steak burrito because he thought he needed the protein and the energy to perform well when he went to ride. And then as it happened, he had a few weeks in a row where he had appointments back to back and he couldn't get over to get his steak burrito. And so he just ate like a McDougall soup or leftovers or something from home. And he said it took him a few weeks, but he was all of a sudden riding in the front of the pack. He was not feeling worn down. He was just feeling so fantastic. And it took him a while to figure out that, oh, actually what he thought was helping him was actually hindering him and hurting him. So while eating at home, he would eat everything we're eating. He was sneaking those burritos every once in a while. But but yeah, otherwise the whole family was on board and open to eating this way. And we part of the other reason I wrote the book was because we really made every mistake in the book. I would say, we went very strict in the beginning because we saw what a big difference it was making. But then I share in the book, my son went to a birthday party, and I can never remember if it was he had 12 hot dogs and 6 cookies, or 6 hot dogs and 12 cookies. But because we had said, we'll eat this way at home, and when you're somewhere else, you can eat however you want, he really took that to heart and, went overboard eating not carcinogenic food or whatever. So, it took a few years of trying to figure out how to make this a long-term thing, not a diet, but a really a different lifestyle that would be sustainable. And that's what I try and help people when I'm consulting with people too, is to get out of this diet idea, because anytime you start a diet, you're going to finish it at some point. You're just waiting till the end, to reach some specific goal, and then maybe to splurge because reward yourself because you did something well. But really, in shifting the thinking to, this is a different lifestyle and something that is sustainable. And really, when we look at it, I mean, this is how people eat around the globe. This is how people have eaten for many years. So it's really, you're not going to be short on anything. You're going to have more energy. You're going to feel better. You're going to be saving money on groceries, and you're not going to need to be probably on medications that many of your peers or family members are on. You're going to be saving time. I mean, there's just so many wonderful benefits that I wish people would try. And I advocate for giving it 10 days. Just try it for 10 days and see how you feel, but really try it. I talk about how to clean out your kitchen so you don't have any temptations, and how to really try it for 10 days and then see at the end of 10 days, get your blood work done and see, did your cholesterol drop? Did your blood sugar go down? Are you feeling less aches and pains? There are so many amazing things that can happen in that amount of time. And then at the end of that time period, maybe I'll keep going for another 10 days, so using how you've done things in the past. Some people are very great with black and white things and can watch one video on how CAFOs run and what it looks like, animal agriculture looks like up close. I think many people, if they saw how our food was produced, would not be able to eat it. Or if they themselves had to kill the chicken that they were going to eat for dinner, that they maybe wouldn't. But some people just need to see something like that. And especially children, that can really change. That can be a hard stop for many people. Other people, adding in healthy habits slowly phasing out some of the unhealthy habits works better. So I talk about knowing yourself too, and working with yourself rather than against yourself to make this an easier transition. So my parents, I tried to help them. They've made some changes, but they're not fully vegan. And my in-laws, my father-in-law was in Christian camping for 33 years, and he was a pastor for 15 years. And the week before COVID hit, he was actually diagnosed with glioblastoma, brain cancer. And he was 66 years old. And he is a Montana cowboy. And he was the guy who would cut the fat off his steak to eat it. Every meal had animal products. He didn't love vegetables. And, while they saw what happened to their grandchild who at age 5, made dietary changes, they themselves didn't at the time. But when he was diagnosed with brain cancer, they said, okay, we'll do it. And they went whole food, plant-based, no oil. We actually sent them to the online McDougall program, and they did that. And he survived. He just passed away 2 Sundays ago. But he lived over 5 years with glioblastoma, which is really unheard of. He was also diagnosed with Parkinson's in that time too. So yeah, and my mother-in-law continues to eat this way. So yeah, in our family alone, I've seen a lot of big changes, which is heartening.
That's wonderful. And I know you care about the environment also, along with the animals and the environment. And so before I forget, I'm going to definitely say that you're going to be presenting at VCOP 21, Climate Healers, Vegan Convergence of the People this weekend for anyone who's watching. So I just wanted to get that in there. When is your presentation?
I believe it's Sunday morning, I think at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah, and I'll be talking about 10 days to big change. Yeah, it's shocking to me that more people who are concerned about the climate or are now feeling the effects of the climate and beginning to look at what to do. Or many people, we're in Santa Cruz, California, so there are a lot of people who are all for green living, but they think that the biggest thing they can do to help the climate is to drive less, or to ride their bike or walk instead of drive their car, which, while helpful, is not the biggest thing we can be doing. So while I, yes, advocate for planting trees and walking and cycling over driving, what we eat is the leading cause of climate change. And so trying to get this information out there for people that animal agriculture is so detrimental to everything when it comes to climate. This information just needs to be shared.
Yeah, so everyone needs to go to Climate Healers and sign up for that. Don't wait till the last minute because it might be too late. I mean, I think you have to pre-register. So that's this weekend. There'll be speakers all day, Saturday and Sunday. So, and that's where I first met you, Rachael. And I mean, Climate Healers does such a wonderful job with their speakers and with their presentations. So I'm definitely going to catch your presentation and I'm excited about that. And all right, so let me move on. So how does the peace of not eating creatures manifest in your life today?
It's so interesting because when I think about, even with the Climate Healers stuff, I love Dr. Rao because he comes from a science background. He comes from an systems engineer background, right? And he looked at the problem of climate change from a global, a big systems engineer mindset, and saw what the biggest issues were, and so is going about trying to make change there. For me, I think looking at for me, I came at this from the health viewpoint because it was our health that I was concerned about, and I look around me, especially here in the United States, and almost everyone is dealing with health issues, whether it's obesity, overweight, heart disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases, so many things, right? That we know now can be affected by what we're putting into our bodies. Even emotional health, understanding the gut and brain axis, that those things are connected. So when we're eating hyperpalatable foods or foods that are really created in a lab, or unhealthy animal products that are fed antibiotics and hormones and things to make them grow fast, these things have a real effect on us. So I know people who have come about this made the change because of their love for animals, and that's a wonderful byproduct for me. That's not the reason that got me to make this change. I don't think there's any one reason better than another, but I love that in the way that we eat and the way we live, I know that I'm not contributing to suffering. I mean, there's enough suffering in the world as it is. And understanding that really what we put on the end of our fork can make big changes. And it can sometimes feel disheartening when you look around at all the struggles and all the suffering. But when I think about it, I will also put a plug for Center for Nutrition System Studies, T. Colin Campbell's organization. Their food and sustainability course was mind-blowing to me. I love their plant-based certificate program. That was also very helpful, but I'd read a lot of books and I didn't learn a whole lot of new information. It was a lot of great science information to back what I had learned. But the food and sustainability, learning about the world food systems, how food has been used in the past, how food is currently used, really how food is weaponized. I mean, it's really fascinating how food is stored, how commodities work, how subsidies work. It was really eye-opening to me, and not in the best way. I mean, it was just sad to learn about all of this. And so for me to choose to not eat animals, to choose to not be putting money into a system that is oppressing not only animals, but also people, and keeping some of these systems in place, contributing to I mean, even just when we look at how our food is grown, who is doing the work for that? Who is picking our vegetables? Are they being paid a living wage? I mean, to people who are working in slaughterhouses, I mean, reading books on that, it's horrendous what it does to people, to your psyche when that's what you have to do day in and day out. So finding out that just by eliminating animals on our plate can take care of so much of that is a really helpful thing for me to move about in the world and to think about where it's hard. And I think you and I were talking about this, is how to talk to people about this, because in my experience, talking about what we eat is right up there with talking about sex and politics. Like, it gets heated fast and people don't really want to go there. People have really deep-seated feelings and emotions when it comes to what they eat, and I understand that. But I also think introducing some questions or introducing some information that maybe people aren't aware of can be helpful in getting people to maybe re-examine what they haven't looked at before, or maybe look at things in a different light, or things they assume might be correct, maybe they're not. So yeah, it can be helpful to open those doors in conversation.
Yeah, and I think what you were talking about reminded me again about all these hyper, what is it, hyper palatable? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Foods,
Yeah.
and so which really cause addictions. So
Yep.
when you're eating the other way, you're not just going nuts when you see, I mean, you start to break out of that, that like I gotta have it mentality, which is just, I mean, it's debilitating for people. I mean, you see something on TV, and then you're just like, you can't get it off your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And, finding out that this is not just like, most people, I think, just go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I feel so addicted to chips. Like, I can eat 5 bags of chips. Yeah, I love chips. But for people to find out that it's not your fault, actually, that there are chemists behind this. There are people from Philip Morris who changed from, when they saw the writing on the wall for tobacco, they shifted their focus to creating foods that are addictive, right? And so, yes, all that hyper palatable, which just means really tasty, right? We really want it. They're creating things that are super sweet, super high in salt, and super high in fat, which in our brain sends chemicals, like fireworks shooting off, because our old brain says we need this to survive. But in fact, we don't need this. And learning about our taste buds, that they literally regenerate about every 2 weeks. So if you can get off these hyper palatable foods, these ultra processed foods, for 2 weeks, you will literally taste things differently, and your brain won't be hijacked by that insatiable desire for something that you've had in the past. You might still have a craving for something, but a ripe peach or ripe cherries might take care of that craving. You could eat an entire watermelon if you wanted. I remember being on a call one time with Dr. Greger, and somebody said, I love grapes, but I don't want to eat too many of them. And he said, why? Eat 2 pounds of grapes if you want. Like, your body will stop you when it's had too much real food. You won't be able to eat anymore. You're not going to hurt yourself eating a fruit with all the fiber in its whole form. So, helping people understand that giving your body a chance to just regenerate a little bit. It doesn't take that long. About 2 weeks, 10 days will really likely do it. And then it's not a deprivation. That's the other thing I really want people to know. Eating this way is actually so satisfying. And I am somebody who doesn't like limits on food. I have never calorie counted. I can't do that. That would drive me bonkers in less than a day. And learning that once you know what to eat, which is whole plant foods, that's it. No animal products, no oil, but you can eat any whole plant foods you want. So, and you can eat as much of them as you want. And in my working with people who are transitioning, oftentimes the problem is people will stop them. They're hungry because they're not eating enough, and learning about calorie density and saying, well, 2 pieces of pizza that you used to have for lunch might equal 4 bowls of soup and a huge salad. And you get to eat all that food and you will be so satisfied with that food. Whereas with that pizza, you might be hungry in 2 hours. So you might want a soda to go with it, or then ice cream afterwards. And it just keeps that addiction rolling. Learning that you can eat to satiation, like to fullness, and you'll actually be shedding any excess weight. You'll think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be gaining weight because I'm eating so much food, but it's actually food that your body needs and your body uses it very efficiently. And learning about calorie density, you'll probably be eating a lot less calories than you were before.
Yeah, that's very promising. So I wanted to ask you about your spirituality and mindfulness. Now, a lot of vegans are stressed out and sad and can't sleep. And, when you lay awake at night, if you've just watched one of those horrible videos, and I try to avoid watching them, I've seen enough. I know what it is, right? And some people say, some people feel like they need to keep watching them. And my suggestion is no, don't watch it, because, and then they're laying awake and feeling so depressed. Now, can you tell us about mindfulness? Because sometimes people think, oh, that's some woo-woo thing. But what is it, and how can it help somebody that's really in anxiety and depression, or, not knowing what to do?
Yeah, I first ran up against this when I actually trained for teaching yoga and Pilates, and I trained with a company. The name of it's escaping me right now. The woman actually is she's a vegan herself. Sorry, maybe I'll remember it, but it was not so much about the Middle Eastern practice of yoga, but it was yoga for everybody was their tag phrase. And so I offered yoga classes in church. We were living in Hawaii at the time. I was attending a Presbyterian church, which is what I was raised in. Then we moved to California and we were attending a covenant church, and I offered free classes. And some people were very uncomfortable having yoga in church. And I said, this is not about actually, we're not worshiping anything. This is like a stretching, using our body, thinking about our body as a temple, taking care of it, and learning how, in my words for mindfulness, just slowing down, bringing our mind to a center to focus on what we want to focus on, which for me is getting outside of ourselves, getting outside of our looping thoughts of this destructive thinking patterns, or being triggered by something that maybe we saw, and coming back to what is true. And so, for different people that can look different, but for me, it's coming back to we have a loving creator who created us, who put us in a world with everything we need. And how do we get back to that place of calm and peace? And so for many people, it can just be slowing down enough. Like, this is where the body comes into this, which is like getting out of this fight or flight that we really live in these days, especially in the United States or other, fast pace. We're if you don't live in a rural setting and you're not outside walking and being in nature, maybe you're cooped up in an office, or you're drinking a lot of caffeine to keep going or whatever. And so we're in this constant state. So even just taking a few moments to take a few deep breaths. So learning some practices of box breathing in for 4 counts, holding that for 4 counts, exhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts. So doing a cycle of that, just to bring your mind and breath kind of back home, just to slow down, and then to choose what we want to focus on, to really train our minds to focus rather than to just allow ourselves to be bombarded by all kinds of things. So for me, that looks like prayer. Especially I start my day with prayer, I end my day with prayer. I read different readings throughout the day, just as a way to bring myself back to what is true, because life can be so distracting and we can get so caught up and start spinning in some of our old thought patterns, or just really destructive thinking. So for me, it's coming back, calming down, remembering what is true. But you're right, it is.
Well, what would you say is true? That, what do you focus on, that this is the truth?
Yeah, for me, well, recently I would say focusing on, I know I have a loving creator and that he calls me chosen. I mean, going with Ephesians 1 is where I've been focused. I am the beloved. God calls me beloved. So when I have thoughts that are opposing that, when I don't see myself as beloved, when I am feeling like I'm not enough, when I am, frustrated at my wits' ends, I need to come back and remind myself that these things are true. I'm adopted, I'm chosen, I'm loved. I have a creator who loves. He fills me with love. And so I can offer that to others. So it's renouncing the lies that I'm believing, which are often centered around not just who God is, but who I am, things that aren't true, and choosing to believe what he says about me. And those are truths that come from the Bible for me, that I, raised Christian. And so for me, it is reminding myself of those truths. And then I can go out and live my life in a different way and choose to look to others differently than how my human nature might look to others. So I want to not be judging other people. I don't want people, that's the last thing I want people to feel. I want them to feel invited into something bigger and invited into hope rather than sickness and illness and frustration and anger and all these things that swirl around us all the time. I want people to see that there is a different way possible, and that it takes a lot of work, but also it's not all work we can do. We have to surrender and say, I can't do this myself. I mean, I think that's part of it. And as far as choosing to eat this way, I mean, I think there are so many commonalities actually in my mind to choosing to eat differently and choosing to follow God, to follow Jesus. There's striking similarities to me. And, one is that we really do need others. We need to be in community. It's helpful to know that there are others out there that are doing the same thing, that are striving towards the same goal. And so that can look like so many different things. I mean, I know Reverend Beth Love has been on before. I found her through COVID, Eat for the Earth, which she was right here in Santa Cruz. But, Nelson Campbell was doing plant pure communities. That's another fantastic way. Just finding some people coming together, sharing a meal, sharing struggles, sharing wins, and then figuring out maybe different ways that you could be active in your community to help other people learn that there can be a different way of being. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. I know that's kind of all over there, but it pains me to sit in church and, there's a table at the back. We just were at my in-laws' church a few months ago, and, they have a table of snacks in the back, which were like ham and cheese rolled up with a toothpick and a egg scramble and pastries, and maybe there was one thing of fruit. But, people are loading up their plates and then are having Sunday school. And then when we have prayer time, people are praying for all these health issues that they're having, heart disease, diabetes related issues, all kinds of things that are directly related to what they're putting in their mouths is right there. And that disconnect, I think, is so unfortunate. And I think we should be, as people who believe in a loving creator, I think we should be an example to others rather than lagging behind and choosing to stay in this food system that really makes no sense for us or the planet or the animals.
Right. Well, yes, that is so true. And I do what you do also. I think I think somewhere in our church, at some point I heard that sin was your disconnection from God, kind of like what you're saying, and I have to call myself back to that sacred space. And, like when I'm feeling scared, I have to think, wait a minute, I've disconnected from this greater being that loves me. Right. And because I'm so loved, all will be well. And all the resources are there. And so I just have to be aware of that. And so like you're saying, calling yourself back to that place. And I love that. And we have a beautiful comment here. Claiming beloved is a beautiful reminder we all need. Thank you for that. It is. I love that word, beloved.
So. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like what you're describing, I think all of us, it's that call to be humble too, right? We have to admit that we don't have everything we need, that we are in need um, of something more, and I think that goes hand in hand with what we're eating. If we can help people see that yeah, this hyper palatable food is not giving them everything they need, that they actually have to humble themselves and go, okay, I have a problem with this, or my health is a problem right now, or the way I'm thinking is a problem right now. But those things can all be helped and reversed. We know diseases can be reversed through Dr. Ornish's work and Esselstyn's work and all these things. Many of these things take humbling ourselves and going, okay, I give up. I need to do something a different way. And isn't that the same thing that we're doing when we come to God and say, okay, I give up. I can't be the master of my own life. I'm not doing a very good job at it. I need help. So I think at the core, these are really kind of similar things.
Yeah, you're right. And being a child of God, or of the universe, or whatever, I mean, whatever faith that people are in, I mean, we have been provided for. So it's not just, I'm going to do everything myself, but I'm going to discover what is out there, and that, discovering new ways to eat. And you are very, very welcoming in your process of helping people and non-judging. And so, as this comment, another comment, as a Christian vegan, I go through the same things at my Carnist church. Yes, and we were talking about that. I mean, and Rachel, you were saying how you would think that people in the church would be closer to accepting veganism, but what do you find as your experiences with people that are very spiritual or religious? I mean, what's not happening there? What do they say to you when you say you're a vegan?
Well, it can be tricky, I will say. Many people are, as staunchly as they believe something when it comes to religion, they maybe wouldn't say it, but they staunchly believe what they do about food as well. And it can be so close to people's hearts, I think, and it can be a very tricky conversation to have. And, I've said many times that I channel is not the right word, but I sometimes think, what doctor do I need to kind of act like in this conversation? Because sometimes people will, if it's a potluck or something, they'll comment, oh, you're not eating whatever, or something. And I really feel like I have to gauge, is this a sincere question, or are they just looking for an argument? Because just like people with religion in general will oftentimes just look for an argument, not have actually an open heart to really be considering something different. I try to gauge where we're at. Sometimes I choose to be Dr. McDougall and say things really straight, because I think sometimes that's what people need to hear, is the truth, and no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No more good news about bad habits. Just really say it like it is. Sometimes, I hear Doug Lyle talking in my ear, going, it's not worth it. You don't need to say anything. Just live your own life. So, I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong. I think different circumstances warrant different kinds of conversations. And so I try to show up present and be trying to practice the presence of Christ, like be a bringer of the presence of Christ. And so listen to people and hear where they're coming from, and try to ascertain, are they really curious? Are they really looking for a different solution? Or are they just wanting to argue some, supposed fact that they heard, or something like that? It's funny though, because when you think about religions, many religions have fasting as a part of their practices. Many religions have eating vegan. Actually, I have Ethiopian Orthodox nieces and nephews, and I just learned this year that during Lent they eat vegan. I have an Orthodox friend as well, and they fast and eat vegan as well. So and then there's like Seventh-day Adventists, right, who as a whole do that. So this is not the other thing. I think people think this is like some new woo-woo stuff out there, but this is actually not new. This this way of being and eating differently and showing respect for others is actually age old. And often, when I talk about people or talk to people about eating this way, I will say it's probably eating like what your grandmother cooked for you. It's way more like that. Now, yes, my grandmother did have, meat that they raised, but primarily what they were eating was food from their vegetable garden or things they had canned or preserved. It was really real food. It wasn't processed food. It wasn't meat at every meal, and this is the kind of stuff you look around the world. And I just think we have a very, I don't know what the right word is, domineering, like such a selfish attitude. When we look, we have enough food in this world to feed everyone. But the way the system has set it up is that we are the haves and there are have-nots. And we keep it that way. We choose to keep it that way. We have enough food to feed people, from the food that we grow for animals, we could be feeding people. We waste a third of our food here in the United States, so these are systematic things that we have just bought into that we haven't maybe paused and slowed down to look at and to go, wait, what part am I playing in this? What can I do differently? I mentioned a gentleman I met years ago. His name was Nathan George, and he was from England, and he started a Hungry for Change, he called it. And it was in churches. And for a week, you would get a box. Each person got a box of food. And in that box, there was a bag of rice, a bag of beans, and oats. And the idea was that you ate like most of the world eats for 1 week. And for that 1 week, you could, donate the money that you would have spent on other food. You could donate to the church or to, organizations that feed the poor, whatever you wanted to do with that. But you could add in, coffee or black tea. Tea is what most of the world drinks. If you wanted, you could also add in some vegetables if you wanted to your beans, but not everybody has that option. And you could add in fruit if you wanted. And our family, our kids were in elementary school, and we thought, we're going to try this. But we said to the kids, you don't have to do this. And I remember our daughter was in like second grade, and she said, no, I want to try this. And so she did have some extra fruit and stuff. But, when you cook this up, it was like, I want to say a cup of rice and half a cup of beans. And that was your meal, in your bowl. And so it was less food than we were used to eating, and very simple food. You could put some herbs and seasonings in that, but we weren't loading it, with salsas and other things that we do now to eat. But it was a way to just be appreciative each meal as to the variety that we have available to us, as to the abundance of food that we have available to us. So even now, if we get to the point where maybe we've been on vacation, we've eaten out more and eaten more, I would say, oil laden or vegan kind of junk food, we'll sometimes go back to doing just rice and beans and oatmeal for a week, just as a way to reset not only our palate so that we recognize our taste buds go, oh yes, fresh fruit is so good, and salad is so good, but as a way to kind of reset our hearts and our minds as well, to be reminded that many people around the world, and not just in the global South, but in the United States as well, don't have access to good, healthy food. And I need to be thankful for that. So that can be a really wonderful reset. Also, in what I talk with people about, like, this way of eating is not going to, people wrongly assume they need to have a Whole Foods near them, or, they need to have a lot of money to buy really specialty items. And that's not what I advocate. I like to go with, registered dietitian Jeff Novick's, like, if you have a dollar store, you can eat this way, because at a dollar store, you can usually find a bag of rice and a bag of beans or lentils, maybe some frozen or canned veggies, and you can eat this way. So don't let the fact that you don't have a Whole Foods or some specialty grocery store around you stop you from eating this way, because you really don't need those things. This is a very simple way of eating, and you'll be saving a lot of money at the same time.
Well, that's very true. It really hit me when you were talking about how disconnected we are from people all over the world, and people that, we are very blessed, to have food that is not, it wouldn't be ripe in this area, that it's coming in
Yeah.
from all over the world. And that's a blessing. And then when people are just eating the bare minimum, many, and then some are starving to death. I mean, we're so unaware of that. So I love that story. And it's something to be mindful about, definitely. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that reminded me of a story. We lived in Alaska for 4 years. Actually, both our kids were born up there, and we worked with a church, and we took high schoolers down to Mexico to build homes in the summer. And many of these kids had never left Alaska before. And so our first year doing this, there were some other leaders who had been on this trip before, and we flew into San Diego. And these kids from Alaska, the leader said, make sure you have a banana. Was at the breakfast buffet or whatever. And most kids were like, no, thank you. I don't. These Alaskan kids were like, I don't like bananas. And these leaders who had seen this before said, no, you need to try a banana, because these kids in Alaska had only ever eaten bananas that had been picked, bright green, chemically treated so that they would ripen, and they don't taste like much. They don't taste like really good bananas in Alaska. But then they go to San Diego and Mexico and try fruit, and their minds are just blown. They taste so good. So that just reminded me of that, unripened fruit and food, how it can be so different in different places.
I know. I love that you told us about that, about the course you took with.
Yeah. And I will say, actually, right now, the course is on sale. I wasn't meaning to do a plug for Center for Nutrition Studies, but they, I believe the end of April, they're having a sale for like a month on their courses. So both the plant-based nutrition certificate, which is hugely helpful in learning why plant-based nutrition is good for our bodies, for the planet, for the animals, and then that food system and food and sustainability, I believe it's called now. How the world food system operates, how our food system operates in the U.S., the plight of farmers, subsidies, all of that. It's a really fascinating course.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. So I want to show this other comment. I gave my pastors vegan information. They refused to read it. I know, isn't that? Oh.
Yes, having run up against this, I know people who are dealing with infertility, and I tried to give them information, and they were like, hard no. Even though these were stories of people who were dealing with the exact same thing, who had made dietary changes and had amazing success. This is such a hard one, because to me also it says something. If somebody is not willing to have a conversation about something, that to me says that that's a hardened heart. I'm not judging this person, but I think if they're so closed-minded in this area, where else might they be very closed-minded? And to me, that's not it's a really hard one. I think from that point, I would just maybe invite them over for a meal and, offer them food. And sometimes, this is back to kind of like, which doctor do you, channel when you're talking to people? Sometimes I'll just we usually make Chef AJ's disappearing lasagna, because people love it. People don't know that there's no meat or cheese in it. And they eat it willingly and often ask for the recipe and have no idea that this is made entirely from plants. So, or we'll do tacos with soy curls that look like chicken. And we don't mention that this isn't chicken, because when you go to somebody's house and they fix you something, they don't tell you this is chicken from wherever. They just make a meal. So I just we'll make a meal, and then if they ask you can tell them, or then sometimes it is, you can offer up, hey, this meal actually didn't hurt the planet, didn't kill any animals. No people had to slaughter an animal to eat this meal. So we're going to give thanks for this food, and pray for those who might not have food available to them or whatever. But back to that kind of mindfulness, like coming back to being so thankful for what we have, and acknowledging our part in this world, and what do we need to do to make it better. But I am sorry, that is hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And I feel like you're right. I mean, it's very confusing. I mean, hearing about that, because that is just, you're not validating, and everyone wants to be heard. I mean, you're telling your story. You're saying, sharing. I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for me to wrap my head. And I don't want to be judgmental. You know, I just want to understand how how is that in alignment with that position, the position of a pastor.
Right. Yeah. And I think, there's been a lot of churches, Christian churches, who have done like the Daniel fast, right? So bringing up maybe scriptural references to, this is not a new idea, right? This is actually a really old idea, a biblical idea even. That might be helpful. Sid Nodder wrote a helpful book linking scripture with eating this way. I mean, there are, I would say, Christian resources out there as well. But I don't know. That is really tricky. If somebody will not even enter into a conversation about something, then that to me brings up a whole lot of questions, I guess.
Right. All right. Well, okay. I want everybody to know where we can get the book, and just for your final comments. So tell us, where can people get your book, and tell us your final thoughts on this. Has been an amazing conversation, and I knew it was going to be, because you're pulling in so many different areas of interest, and how eating affects all these different areas of the planet.
Yeah. So my book, For Fork's Sake, A Quick Guide to Healing Yourself and the Planet Through a Plant-Based Diet, can be found anywhere you buy books. Amazon, it's there. I personally don't shop at Amazon. I don't want to give Jeff Bezos any more money. So I stopped like 2 years before COVID hit, and then I was heavily outweighed in people purchasing things there. But I will say also that I had several Christian friends, when I worked the title, they said, I will not buy that book. I was going for a tongue-in-cheek, a light, and trying to draw in, all kinds of people. But some people are offended by the title. I will also say that Amazon will not run ads for my book because of the title. So that's kind of a funny thing out there. But you can also get it online. I purchase books from Barnes and Noble. It's available there. Indigo Books. It's available all over. There's a few different bookstores in Canada that carry it. So anywhere you get books, you can find this book. It's available in hardcover, in paperback. I did do an audiobook, and like I mentioned, it's just under 4 hours. So that's like 4 good walks. You could take a walk, and we could chat for 4 walks. So you can find it wherever you get books. And my website is www.forforksakebook.com. And I have some recipes on there. I do consulting if people are looking at trying to transition their family and they're having a hard time. I can help people with that. Some people want, weekly check-ins. Some people want a once a quarter check-in. Some people have specific things that they're wanting help with, or maybe they fell off the wagon and are trying to figure out how to get back on, or tried this vegan thing years ago, but are looking at getting back on. So I do work with people in that way as well. And final thoughts. I want everybody to know this information. I think this information should be readily available, and it should be taught in schools. It should be in grocery stores. I went and visited a friend in Copenhagen 8 years ago. And when I went, she said, now, I'm sure we're not going to be able to eat as well as we do, when I came to see you in California. She is Danish, and then for 6 nights we went out to entirely plant-based restaurants. And I said, we don't even have 3 of these in Santa Cruz, California, where I live. So around the world, this is catching on. I don't think that truth can be, suppressed for forever. So for people who are feeling without hope in either health or environment, or financially they're feeling strapped, I think there's a lot of hope to be offered in how we eat. It can change so much. So I really do want people to know that it's not as difficult as you think, that it will work probably better than you think. You'll feel better than you have. You'll be saving money. And you'll have more time to do the things that you are called to do in this life.
Right. That's very good final words. And don't forget, everybody, VCOP 21 Vegan Convergence of the People is this weekend, 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. And Rachael is she is a guest speaker. So go check out the schedule. It's on Climate Healer's website, and you'll see where she's presenting and all the other guests. And so join. You don't have to stay for all 2 days, all day long. You join and come in as you want. It's also recorded, so make sure you sign up for that. And this has been a wonderful conversation, and it's just been very enlightening and very interesting. So thank you, Rachael, and thank you, whoever's watching on the replay, and thank you for all those beautiful comments. Our friend that was commenting, because we're here to support, and make sure you all check out Rachael's website and get that book. So thank you, Rachael. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Marquita. It was wonderful being with you.
All right. Thanks, Ellen. Thanks for joining. All right. Bye, y'all. Have a beautiful afternoon.